Amelia had just landed in the United States when she was forcibly taken inside the plane by a man. Can you imagine the terror of being trapped with no escape? It turned out, he was also the same man her money-hungry Aunt Caroline intended for her to marry. On that plane was where she was first torn apart. Amelia had just returned to the United States on her aunt's orders. "Amelia, come back here right now," Aunt Caroline demanded over the phone. "But Auntie, I'm about to graduate. Just one last semester." "You're coming back because I said so, or your sister Stephanie will be the one to lose her life." "I'll come back. Please don't hurt my sister," Amelia replied. She didn't bother arguing further, knowing full well Aunt Caroline was capable of anything. Amelia's sister Stephanie had been comatose for 3 years due to an accident that also took their parents' lives. Custody over them fell to Aunt Caroline. By the time Amelia turned 21, she did her best to care for Stephanie alone. Aunt Caroline ended up with a large chunk of their father's wealth, just for being his sister. Amelia chose to study nursing abroad, figuring that if she stayed in the States, her aunt would never allow her to get anywhere in life. Worried Amelia might claim what was left of her father's estate. Still, Amelia was startled when she got that call from Aunt Caroline threatening Stephanie's life. What dark secrets was her aunt hiding? Stay tuned with Dark Voices to find out. She had no idea how her aunt found out her location, nor did her aunt explain the real reason for summoning her back. But Aunt Caroline knew Stephanie was Amelia's weakness. When the plane finally landed, Amelia grabbed her belongings. Before she could leave, someone suddenly covered her mouth. She struggled, but his grip was too strong. She wanted to scream, but a hand was clamped over her mouth as he dragged her away from the other disembarking passengers. He pulled her toward the back of the plane and shoved her into a small restroom, switching off the lights. She was about to scream when she felt a gun pressed against her head. Her back turned to him. "Follow my order, or I'll shoot you," he said in a cold, deep voice. Her hands trembled. "No, please don't kill me," she pleaded, voice shaking. "Of course not, sweetheart," he replied, moving closer until he was pressed against her. "I need you," he whispered in her ear. At that moment, she felt his hard manhood pressing against her. She closed her eyes in silent prayer, tears escaping her eyes in terror. She heard the sound of his zipper. At the same time, he yanked up her dress. She wanted to scream for help, but fear pinned her in place. The gun was still pressed to her head. "Don't worry, it'll be quick," he rasped, voice unsteady with desire. He pushed her forward, bending her waist. She bit down on her lip when his hand found its way between her legs, ripping aside her undergarments. She gasped. "No, no, I beg you," she whispered, but it was as if he didn't hear. He took hold of her breasts, and a moment later, she felt him thrust his weapon into her tender inner place. A sharp pain coursed through her as if something tore inside. "Ah, damn, virgin," he muttered. He gripped her waist, inhaling the scent of her neck as he moved. Tears streamed down her face. Fear overwhelmed her, yet she couldn't do anything but let him do what he wanted. When he finally reached his release, he pressed a kiss to her neck. "I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry," he whispered. Amelia didn't say a word, only sobbing until she heard the door slam shut. She collapsed to the floor, hugging herself, weeping uncontrollably. What did I do to deserve that? Her phone rang. She slowly pulled it out of her shoulder bag, seeing Aunt Caroline's number on the screen. She answered it at once. "Where are you, Amelia? We've been waiting here. Your plane landed a while ago, yet you're nowhere to be found. Are you making a fool of me?" Aunt Caroline's furious voice echoed on the other end. Amelia wanted to tell her aunt what had just happened, but she knew Aunt Caroline. She'd only mock her, or worse, blame her for it. "I'm on my way down, Auntie. I had trouble getting my luggage," she stammered. "Hurry up. You're not that important to wait for," her aunt snapped. "Yes, sorry." Amelia fixed herself, washing her face so no one would see she'd been crying. Fortunately, her dress was long and thick enough to hide the fact she was no longer wearing any underwear. Filled with disgust, she threw away the torn garment in the trash before hurriedly leaving the restroom. There was no one else around, including the man who assaulted her, so she made her way out. A flight attendant helped her retrieve her luggage, and she rushed off the plane, her knees still weak with fear that the man might be nearby. Thankfully, another flight attendant accompanied her out of the terminal. She kept glancing around, making sure no suspicious man was watching. "You're so slow," Uncle Ronald, Aunt Caroline's husband, shouted angrily when he saw her. He grabbed her bag harshly. "She thinks she's VIP," Aunt Caroline remarked. The pain of her recent ordeal still clung to Amelia's heart. And now her aunt and uncle's awful treatment just weighed her down further. She didn't speak the entire ride home, barely processing Aunt Caroline's ranting. Her mind was filled with the memory of the assault. She couldn't stop tears from falling over and over in her thoughts. She cursed the heartless man who did this to her. "Amelia, Amelia?" Aunt Caroline snapped, tapping her. Amelia quickly wiped her tears away. "What is it?" she asked softly. Aunt Caroline shook her head, clearly running out of patience. When they pulled up to the house, Amelia recognized it at once. A place that was once full of warmth, but now seemed neglected. "Oh, ma'am, Dad," greeted Emily, her stepsister. Emily glanced at Amelia. "Oh, look who came back to town," she smirked. Amelia ignored her and followed them inside. She had hoped Nanny Laura would greet her, but no one. She looked around and noticed many belongings were gone, the place no longer neatly kept. She frowned. "Aunt Caroline, where's Nanny Laura?" Aunt Caroline shrugged. "I sent her away," Emily answered. "She was just a useless old woman." Amelia's mouth fell open as she turned to Aunt Caroline in disbelief. "Auntie, is that true?" Emily chimed in. "She's old. She needed to rest, so we sent her back to the rural area." "Nanny Laura is part of our family," Amelia pleaded. "She took care of Mother when she was still alive and raised me too." "Well, your mother isn't here anymore, is she?" Aunt Caroline replied coldly. "You see her anywhere?" Amelia stared at her aunt in shock. "I can't believe you. You sent her away without even telling me." Emily let out a mocking whisper, "As if my mom would change her mind for you." Amelia's hands balled into fists. "So, let's get to the point. Why did you bring me back here? What do you and Uncle Ronald want now? Isn't it enough you took this house from us?" She fired questions while glaring at Aunt Caroline. Her aunt didn't answer right away. "Go on and tell her, Caroline, so we can skip the drama," Uncle Ronald muttered. "Tell me what?" Amelia insisted. "You're getting married, Amelia." "What?" Amelia almost shouted. "Married, Auntie? That's impossible." She stepped back, her world crashing around her. "You're lucky, actually," Emily interjected with a sly grin. "He picked you specifically." Amelia frowned. "What are you talking about?" "A wealthy businessman, a powerful family," Uncle Ronald added as he poured himself a drink, sitting on the couch. "This is the best deal we could ever land." Amelia felt anger well up inside her. "I'm not part of any arrangement you made," she snapped. "Is that so?" Aunt Caroline's gaze turned icy. "Do you realize the hospital where Stephanie is confined is owned by the man you're going to marry?" Amelia's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "Even if there's still some money left from your father, it won't be enough to keep her in that hospital. If you refuse, no other facility will take her in," Aunt Caroline declared. Amelia felt her knees tremble. She suspected her aunt's sudden call had something to do with a plan. Now it was confirmed. She truly had no other option. "You can't refuse, Amelia," Aunt Caroline said, stepping closer to her. "If you want your sister alive, you have no choice." Amelia looked at Emily, who was busy taking selfies on her new phone. Uncle Ronald, on the other hand, sipped liquor like an indifferent spectator. Amelia inhaled slowly, trying to swallow her fear. "Who is this man I'm supposed to marry?" she asked in a trembling voice, feeling as though her world was collapsing. Aunt Caroline and Uncle Ronald exchanged looks before smiling. Lucas Monroe, Aunt Caroline replied. A billionaire and mafia boss. Amelia's heart sank. Lucas Monroe was known as one of the most ruthless, most powerful businessmen in the country, with rumored underground dealings and a dark reputation. She shook her head. No, please, not him. Sorry, dear, Aunt Caroline whispered. But we've already been paid. Amelia's legs nearly gave out. She knew there was no way out of this. She hardly slept that night. Inside the bedroom she once called home, she felt like a prisoner. Over and over, she tried to figure out how to escape, but she knew it wouldn't be easy. They had Stephanie's life in their hands, and now hers as well. Will Amelia find a way out, or is she trapped forever? Keep watching Dark Voices to uncover the shocking truth. Morning came. Amelia woke to a loud pounding on her door. Amelia, get up. Dress yourself properly, came Aunt Caroline's cold voice. When Amelia didn't respond, her aunt threw the door open, storming in. My God, look at you. You look like a rag, Aunt Caroline snapped. Lucas will be here in 2 hours, and you look like a disaster. Amelia glanced at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were puffy from crying, her usually neat hair a mess, but she didn't care. I don't want you embarrassing us, Aunt Caroline went on. You will wear what Emily picked for you, and you will smile. Understand? Amelia didn't answer. She just stood up and left the room, letting her aunt see. She walked into the living room and saw that everything was arranged. Expensive flowers on the table, fine food laid out, and Emily smiling smugly while clutching a fancy red dress. I picked this out myself, Emily announced. I bet Lucas will love seeing you in it. Amelia let out a sharp breath. What do you mean? Well, obviously he wants to make sure you won't embarrass him, Uncle Ronald replied, sipping whiskey. He sent over that designer dress. Wear it. Amelia heard the pounding of her heart. She had never met Lucas Monroe in person, but everything she'd heard about him was terrifying. Ruthless, merciless, never tolerates failure. She gingerly took the dress. In her room, her hands shook while she slipped it on. When she came out, the room fell silent. Aunt Caroline smiled. Emily glared. And Uncle Ronald looked pleased. Finally, you're presentable, Aunt Caroline said. Sit down. He'll be here any minute. Unsure of what else to do, Amelia sat on the sofa, her future hanging by a thread, waiting for a man she'd never seen. Soon, she heard the rumble of a high-end car pulling up outside. She swallowed hard. He's here, Emily whispered, sounding more excited than anyone else. 2 men in black suits entered first, clearly bodyguards. Between them walked a tall man. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. Lucas Monroe. Tall, broad-shouldered, exuding a fearsome aura. His cold eyes locked onto her. He smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile that put anyone at ease. It was more of a warning. Finally, he said in a deep, heavy voice, "Nice to meet you, fiancé." Amelia felt rooted to her seat, his gaze unflinching. She was like a caged animal before a predator. He strode forward, brimming with authority, and Aunt Caroline and Uncle Ronald greeted him with fear, respect, and greed in their eyes. Amelia, he said, his voice echoing like an order. She didn't know how to respond and simply looked at him. Lucas, it's such an honor to meet you, Aunt Caroline gushed, forcing a smile. Amelia is very lucky to be chosen by your family. He glanced at Amelia again, eyes scrutinizing her. You don't look happy, he remarked. Her hands shook. I wasn't expecting this, she managed in a quiet voice. He smiled, though his expression remained icy. Of course you weren't. Life's full of surprises, isn't it? He leaned in so close she could practically feel his breath. She couldn't move, intimidated by his presence. Sit, he commanded. Amelia found herself dropping onto the sofa, her body obeying him instinctively. He sat opposite her, arms crossed. Let's talk business, he said. Amelia glanced at Aunt Caroline and Uncle Ronald, who both looked eager, as if this was merely a business negotiation. "Do you know why I chose you?" Lucas asked. She shook her head. "Because you're leverage," he replied plainly. "Your father supposedly owed my family a great debt. He's not around to pay, so now it's on you. You're lucky, you know." Amelia's mind spun. "What do you mean? I never knew about this debt." "You don't need to," he said curtly. "All that matters is you do your part. You'll marry me, and I'll see to it your sister stays alive." She froze. "Are you threatening me?" she asked, trying not to let her anger and fear show. He shrugged. "Call it what you want, but if you refuse, well, hospitals can be unpredictable places." She swallowed hard. "I assure you I can be a good husband," he added, smiling grimly. "But disobey me, and you'll see a different side of me." Her fists clenched at her sides. She had no choice. "Do we have a deal, Amelia?" he pressed. She inhaled slowly, tears threatening to fall. In an instant, her life was no longer hers. She nodded. "Yes, Lucas." He smiled again, and this time his eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "That's my girl." When Amelia glanced over, Aunt Caroline and Uncle Ronald looked thrilled. Emily seemed annoyed, gripping her fork tightly. Amelia didn't bother to figure out why. Lunch was served, but Amelia had no appetite. She was starving, yet her stomach churned. She excused herself, wanting to breathe for a moment. She stayed a while in the bathroom to calm her nerves. When she emerged, Lucas was on the phone. She couldn't help overhearing the way he spoke. It was low, commanding. "Find her." "I don't care how long it takes," he said sharply. Amelia watched him, anxiety building. "Make sure she has nowhere else to go," he added before hanging up. She wondered if she should ask. Curiosity got the better of her. "Who are you looking for?" He slowly turned, expression suddenly guarded. "That's none of your business." She bit her lip, though she knew she shouldn't pry. The question slipped out before she could stop it. "Is it a woman? Someone you used to date?" His brow furrowed, and his gaze darkened. "You're getting bold, aren't you?" She backed away, seeing the flicker of anger in his eyes. Then he exhaled and gave a slight, unreadable smile. "No, she's not an ex, just someone I need to find." He said nothing more, turning to leave her standing there. That afternoon, Lucas's men escorted Amelia to a grand hotel. Everything about it screamed luxury. With security in every corner, she knew escape would be impossible. Inside, she was shown to a suite bigger than her entire family home. The curtains were plush, the bed unbelievably soft, and the bathroom fit for royalty. Still, she felt like a prisoner. She sat on the edge of the bed, hugging herself as silent tears fell. She had no idea what kind of life awaited her. A loud knock startled her. "Amelia," it was Lucas's voice. She quickly wiped her tears, opened the door, and found him standing there, still wearing his expensive suit, though his tie was loosened. "I'm coming in," he said, not waiting for an invitation. She backed away from his presence. He shut the door behind him, eyeing the suite. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he asked, then turned his attention to her. "This is your room until we're married." Her forehead creased. "Meaning we're not getting married right this second?" He smirked. "I want us both prepared. I won't take you to the altar without a proper ceremony." "But I never wanted any of this," she protested, voice cracking with emotion. "Neither did I," he said, stepping closer. Amelia retreated until her back hit the wall, and he stood in front of her, too close. He tipped her chin so she had no choice but to look at him. "But you have no other choice," he murmured coldly. "I also won't let you slip away because I still need something from you." She gasped. "What? What?" He glanced aside, releasing her. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow will be a long day," he said, and left, leaving her legs shaky. She remained by the door, trying to understand everything that had just happened. Fear settled over her, not just for herself, but for Stephanie. She had no alternative. She walked back to the bed, scanning the lavish room. It was gorgeous, but felt like a lifeless cage, a gilded prison. She hugged herself, willing her heart to stop pounding so violently. She had no choice but to wait for what came next. Another knock. She swallowed, opened the door, and was relieved it wasn't Lucas. Instead, a tall woman stood there in a black dress, radiating sophistication. "Good evening, Miss Amelia," she greeted with a polite smile. "I'm Miranda, one of Mr. Monroe's staff. He sent me to check on you, see if you need anything before bedtime." Amelia didn't answer immediately, still tense from everything that happened. Noticing her hesitation, Miranda nodded. "I know you have many questions," she said. "But my only advice is, if you want an easier life in Mr. Lucas's world, go along with whatever he wants." Amelia narrowed her eyes. "So, you're suggesting I just submit to him?" Miranda's smile turned sharper. "Let's just say life is simpler when you comply with all his wishes." Before Amelia could speak again, Miranda handed her a box. "Wear this tomorrow. There's an important dinner for you and Mr. Lucas." Amelia eyed the box warily, but didn't take it at once. Miranda placed it on a nearby table. "Rest well, Miss Amelia. Good night." She left before Amelia could utter another word. Amelia looked at the box and slowly opened it. Inside was a red silk dress, thin and form-fitting. Her hands shook as she realized the message was clear. She wasn't just Lucas's fiancée. She was his possession. The next day, Amelia sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the red dress Miranda had brought. She wrestled with whether to wear it. She knew she had no choice and finally put it on. It hugged her figure closely, too revealing for her taste, but it was all she had. Staring in the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. A woman she didn't know, trapped in a life she never asked for. A knock sounded. "Miss Amelia, Mr. Lucas is waiting for you," announced one of the guards. Her nerves rattled as she stepped out. Two armed men escorted her to a grand dining hall. Her eyes widened at the sight of a long table laden with exquisite dishes, like a royal feast. Lucas, in a black suit, with a few buttons open at the collar, reclined in his chair, swirling a glass of wine. Finally, he greeted, a faint smile appearing. "I thought you'd never come down." She said nothing, moving toward the table. One of his men pulled out a chair for her, and she sat, heart pounding. The delicious aromas filled the air, but she had no appetite. "You look," Lucas observed, not taking his eyes off her, "remarkable in red." Amelia clenched her fists under the table. "Why did you call me here?" she demanded. He gave a half smile. "I just wanted to have a decent conversation, seeing as we're to be married." She stiffened at the word married. "Don't use that word. I never chose you." "I have no choice," she snapped. He placed his glass down and leaned forward. His eyes turned cold. "Amelia," he said quietly, "accept it. I'm your life now, and there's nothing you can do about it." The weight of his words pressed on her. "Eat," he commanded. "I don't want you starving." She stared at the food. She had no real choice, and she needed to stay strong for Stephanie's sake. She picked up her utensils and ate slowly, each bite like a rock in her throat. Lucas calmly sipped his wine until at last he broke the silence. "You don't want this wedding, right?" he asked, swirling the wine in his glass. "Well, guess what? I don't want it either." She looked up, startled. "What do you mean?" He sighed, sounding as though he was getting tired of repeating himself. "I wasn't the one who singled you out. My grandfather did. He's the one who brokered this deal with your dear Aunt Caroline. That story about your father's debt was just what your aunt wanted me to say." Amelia could hardly believe what she was hearing. She felt fury building inside at the lengths her aunt and uncle would go. She swallowed. "If you don't want it, why not cancel it?" He gave a bitter laugh. "If it were that easy, I would have. But in my world, deals aren't casually broken. I owe my grandfather a great deal. He paused briefly. And anyway, you matter to him. Confusion gripped her. Matter? Why? He studied her face as if gauging her reaction. Because he values marriage and especially the bride's side of the family. Before she could press further, he stood and stared at her intently. I won't force you to love me, Amelia. I don't need your affection, but don't think about running away. You won't get far. He moved closer. She could almost feel the heat of his body. You're mine now, whether you like it or not. Her heart pounded, not from pleasure, but from terror and rage. He exhaled, as if calming himself. I wanted to talk to you tonight because I'll be gone for a few months. She frowned. What do you mean? You don't need the details, he said curtly. Just stay in this mansion with my men. If you try to run, you won't like what happens. Why are you leaving? He looked away. That's none of your concern, he answered before walking off. He left her at the table, questions swirling in her mind. Nearly 2 months passed, and Lucas still hadn't returned. No one would tell Amelia anything. She was in the mansion's garden when Aunt Caroline suddenly called. Amelia, looks like you might not become Lucas's wife after all, her aunt said, obviously irritated. Amelia's hands grew clammy. What do you mean, Auntie? Haven't you heard? Aunt Caroline's voice rose. Lucas Monroe is behind bars, and if your wedding doesn't happen, Stephanie's going to die. She ended the call. No, Amelia whispered in panic. She needed to do something. She sought out Marco, Lucas's most trusted bodyguard. Tell me where he is, she demanded. He hesitated. I'm not sure if I can. Marco, don't test me. If I can't talk to him, my sister might die. He sighed, glanced around warily, then leaned in. He's in a maximum security prison. It's nearly impossible to get to him, but not totally. Amelia didn't hesitate. She made arrangements to see Lucas and used every shred of power or influence his last name provided. She didn't know how she managed it, but somehow she got inside that cold place. Separated by glass, she almost didn't recognize him at first. He had bruises on his face, eyes haunted by fatigue. Yet he still projected an air of defiance. He picked up the phone, and so did Amelia. What are you doing here? He asked icily. She shot back, What are you doing here? He folded his arms. There are things you don't need to know. Amelia's frustration boiled over. Listen, if our wedding doesn't happen, they'll kill Stephanie, she cried, tears spilling down. Lucas stared at her for a moment, testing if she was lying. They can't do that. I have men guarding her. She sniffled, voice trembling. But what if they still find a way? Please, save my sister. He let out a curse, dropped the phone abruptly, turned away, and left her sitting there. With no other choice, Amelia used every penny of her remaining inheritance to bail out Lucas. She knew it was risky, but saw no other way to save Stephanie. It took days of negotiations, paying massive sums to attorneys, but eventually Lucas walked free. Amelia stood outside the facility, heart pounding. The gates opened, revealing Lucas in a simple shirt and pants, still looking powerful despite everything. He stepped toward her, confusion evident in his stare. You bailed me out? She nodded. I had no choice. He shook his head and approached. Amelia, do you realize what a huge risk you took? You shouldn't have spent your money on me. If I hadn't, how could you get out? How could we save Stephanie? She argued, eyes fierce. He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw a spark of something new, something like respect or concern. He let out a deep breath. You really have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. They got into the car. Amelia glanced sideways at him. Why were you arrested in the first place? She asked softly. What did they say you did? Lucas hesitated. Assault, he muttered, still staring straight ahead at the road. But it's complicated. Amelia's heart hammered. She knew which assault he meant. Did you do it? He looked torn. Someone dragged me into it, but that's not an acceptable excuse. It was my fault. I owned up to it. Amelia swallowed hard. A terrifying possibility reared in her mind. He had once attacked someone on a plane. Could it be her? She felt an icy dread. Lucas, she said in a trembling voice. He glanced her way, then focused on the road again. She took a shuddering breath. Where exactly did it happen? He frowned. Why? I just need to know. He exhaled, frustration evident. On a flight. I was coming back from overseas. I only remember bits. There was a woman. She was terrified, pleading for her life. Amelia trembled violently. Tears gathered in her eyes. She couldn't hide her reaction, and he noticed. Amelia, he asked, but she refused to look at him, not sure she could bear the truth. Suddenly, his phone rang. Boss, I found her, said the voice on the other end. The woman from the plane. Amelia's eyes shut at those words, everything turning cold. Lucas glanced at her, then pressed the phone closer. Who is she? He demanded. Before the answer came, the call dropped. Damn it, Lucas swore, gripping his phone tightly. Amelia's heart thundered, her mind screaming. If her suspicions were correct that she was the woman, what would he do if he found out the truth? They drove back to his mansion. Amelia stood frozen by the large entrance, unsure if she could even walk. Then inside, she saw Emily standing in the foyer, dressed in designer clothes, exuding fake elegance. She eyed Amelia. Oh, Amelia, there you are, Emily said sweetly. Lucas strode up to her, all patience gone. You're the woman from the plane, aren't you? He demanded. Emily shrugged. That's what your men discovered, right? Amelia's stomach lurched. Why was Emily claiming that? If Emily was lying, what was her plan? Why are you here, Emily? Amelia asked, trying to steady her voice. Emily gave a thin smile. Isn't it obvious, dear cousin? I'm here to claim what's mine. Amelia frowned. What are you talking about? Emily let out a soft laugh. I'm the woman who slept with Lucas, which means I should be the one he marries. Amelia felt her breath leave her body. She looked at Lucas, who was glaring at Emily, rage simmering beneath the surface. Yet, one thing was clear. Something about Emily's story was off. Lucas eyed Emily. He remembered only the trembling woman on the plane, the fear in her voice, her desperate pleas. But Emily had zero fear. It all seemed rehearsed, like a show. He cast a quick glance toward Amelia. She looked distraught, her fists clenched. She was trembling. In that instant, he realized she must be the woman he'd assaulted, not Emily. He pressed Emily. If you really were the woman on that plane, tell me what I said to you just before I left. Emily paused ever so slightly before replying. You said you were sorry, that you didn't mean for it to happen, she answered, smiling like she'd practiced the lines. But that wasn't his last statement on that plane. Lucas turned toward Amelia, who stood with her head down, shoulders trembling. Her reaction alone was more genuine than Emily's entire performance. He remembered how she'd kept asking him about that assault, how she'd nearly collapsed in the car. Damn it, he muttered under his breath. It was Amelia he had harmed, not Emily. Horror and regret crashed over him. She'd never told him. She hadn't even gone to the police. Why? He inched closer to Emily, trying to mask his fury. You're really certain you're the woman on that plane? Emily nodded unwaveringly. Of course. Why, Lucas? Worried I might show up pregnant? Don't worry, I'm safe. She laughed, taunting him. Suddenly, Amelia stood up. Enough. Her voice was low but firm. Emily tried to grab her arm, but Amelia yanked away before Emily could even touch her. It was unclear whether Amelia was more afraid or furious, but the disgust in her eyes was unmistakable. And the pain it caused was far worse than any physical wound. "Amelia, we need to talk," Lucas said softly, but she ignored him. She walked briskly toward the door. Before she could leave, Emily blocked her way. "Oops, wait. So, Amelia, looks like your wedding isn't going to happen, huh?" Amelia froze. She glanced at Emily, and for the first time, her expression changed from meek to enraged. Her eyes blazed wide, and before anyone could react, she slapped Emily hard enough to send Emily stumbling back. Emily clutched her cheek, stunned. "You slapped me." "Yes, I did." "Does it hurt?" Amelia's tone was cold. "Emily, don't use me in your filthy schemes." Silence filled the room. No one dared speak. Amelia then walked away, and Lucas let her go, but he was determined not to lose her like this. He quietly followed as Amelia hurried off, watching where she went. He saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her pace quickened, the way she occasionally wiped her cheek as if fighting back tears. Eventually, they arrived at a hospital. Lucas paused. It belonged to his family's business. Amelia strode inside, seemingly unaware that he was behind her. She headed straight to a particular room. When he read the name on the door, he realized it must be her sister. He carefully cracked the door open. Amelia was inside, approaching a hospital bed where a pale, motionless young woman lay. Stephanie, her younger sister, comatose for 3 years. Amelia bit her lip and sat by the bed, holding Stephanie's hand. "Stephanie, I'm here," she whispered, voice thick with grief. "I know I've been gone a while. But I promise I won't leave you again." The words fell heavily, echoing in the silent room. Lucas simply watched, understanding at last why Amelia felt so trapped. She wasn't just fighting for herself, but also for the sister who couldn't fight for herself. And in that moment, he quietly made a decision. He would never let Amelia be hurt again. A few seconds later, Amelia heard a deep yet gentle voice behind her. "Amelia." She whirled around, startled to see Lucas. Gone was his usual coldness. Instead, there was a flicker of concern in his eyes. "Why are you here?" she asked, quickly wiping away tears she hadn't realized had fallen. He didn't answer right away, simply taking in the sight of Stephanie, pale and motionless. Something about it disturbed him, though he kept it hidden. "She's important to you," he said, not as a question, but a statement. Amelia nodded. "She's all I have left." Lucas fell silent for a moment, then stepped forward. She thought he might walk out, but instead he pulled out his wallet, took out a business card, and offered it. "I know you don't trust me, but if a day comes when you need help, any kind of help, call me." Amelia didn't know why, but she couldn't bring herself to refuse. She took the card, eyeing the unfamiliar direct line written there. Their gazes met. For the first time, she didn't feel afraid of him. She felt something different, a shift in how she saw Lucas Monroe. "It's you, isn't it?" Lucas suddenly said. "The woman on the plane." Amelia froze, her entire body tensed at his words. She looked away. "I don't know what you're talking about." Her tone stayed as normal as she could manage. He didn't let it go. He stepped closer, enough for her to feel his presence at her side. "At first, I couldn't remember," he continued. But once they found Emily, it felt wrong, like something didn't fit. Amelia stood by Stephanie's bedside and closed her eyes. She fought to keep her hands steady. "Tell me the truth, Amelia," Lucas said, his voice cool but controlled. "Was it you?" Slowly, she nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. She no longer had the strength to hold back. "Yes," she whispered, barely audible. "It was me. I'm the woman. I was the one on the plane." She felt utterly drained as she admitted it, reliving all the pain, fear, and rage she'd bottled up inside. She never expected what came next. Lucas suddenly pulled her into his arms in a tight embrace. She could hardly breathe, stunned by the firmness of his hold. Yet more shocking was what she heard him murmur. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Amelia. I didn't know." I couldn't accept it. Lucas's voice shook, his chest trembling against her. She had never seen him so vulnerable. She didn't know how to feel anger, hurt, or perhaps a strange sense of relief that he truly regretted what he'd done. But would sorry be enough to erase that agony? Lucas held on as he felt Amelia's body tremble. She didn't push him away, didn't resist, but he knew he deserved her hatred. He had inadvertently put her through hell. I swear to God, Amelia, if I had known it was you, if I'd known what was happening, I never would have let it happen, he murmured. She began to slip from his hold, so he loosened his grip. Amelia's eyes shone with pain, anger, and fear. Then why didn't you remember me? She asked. Her voice was shaky yet firm. He avoided her gaze, knowing he couldn't dodge the question. Before I boarded that plane, someone I trusted gave me a drink. I felt dizzy. My body was burning up. The next thing I remember, I woke up alone in a hotel room. He clenched his fist. Someone orchestrated it, Amelia. It wasn't an accident. She stared at him, her expression torn between shock and confusion. What? What do you mean? Somebody set me up, Lucas answered, voice tense. And if I'm right, Emily was behind it. Amelia's eyes widened. That's impossible, she whispered. But how can you be sure? He looked grim. Because she came to me pretending she was the woman I was with on the plane. Amelia nodded slowly. What do we do now? How do we prove who's really behind it? Lucas gave a dangerous smile. Simple, Amelia. We make them confess. Soon enough, Lucas's men arrived. He took Amelia's hand, leading her to a secluded spot behind the hospital. Aunt Caroline and Emily were there, tied up and trembling with fear and rage. You made a mistake trying to fool me, Lucas said coldly, leveling a hard stare at them. Now tell me why you did it. Emily glared, though her fear was obvious. You don't understand, she shouted. I was supposed to be the one you married. I'm the perfect match for you, but Amelia showed up and ruined everything. Lucas's lip curled. You really stooped so low you were willing to destroy someone else's life. Amelia's and mine, too. You have no idea, Aunt Caroline yelled. We would have gone broke if we hadn't done this. If Emily married you, we wouldn't never have to worry about money. Amelia let out a bitter laugh. So that's all you wanted? Money? Aunt Caroline said nothing, guilt etched on her face. Lucas stepped closer, bending a bit to stare them down. Congratulations. Because of your schemes, you've both lost everything. Emily flinched. What's that supposed to mean? Straightening up, Lucas pulled out some documents. It means all the funds you stole, all the assets you illegally claimed from Amelia, have been frozen. Aunt Caroline's eyes widened. No, that can't be. It can, and it's already done, Lucas said. I have evidence of every unlawful thing you've done, including trying to con me. You'll both be in jail soon. Emily sank to her knees, stunned. Aunt Caroline screamed, thrashing in a fury that got her nowhere. Amelia walked over to Lucas and clutched his hand. Is this all true? She asked uncertainly. He met her gaze and nodded slowly. Your nightmare is over, Amelia. For the first time, she managed a genuine smile, a smile of freedom. Amelia stood beside Lucas, watching as the police ushered Aunt Caroline and Emily into a patrol car. Both women were shouting, pleading. Lucas, you can't do this to us. Emily wailed, struggling against the officers. Amelia, I'm your aunt. Can't you forgive me? Aunt Caroline yelled desperately. Amelia turned her back on them. She had endured too much, and at last, it was ending. A police officer approached Lucas. Thank you for cooperating, sir. We also have plenty of evidence of their financial fraud and threats. The case against them is strong. Lucas nodded. Make sure they can't hurt anyone else. Yes, sir. Right before the squad car door shut, Emily glared at Amelia. Her voice was cold with hatred. I'll never forgive you, Amelia. Then the door slammed, and the car drove off. Amelia watched until it vanished, feeling a weight lift from her chest. She breathed deeply. It's over, she murmured. Lucas chuckled quietly. Yes, it's over. She turned to look at him and saw relief in his eyes. You're free now, Amelia. For the first time, she felt genuinely liberated. Suddenly, her vision blurred. She pressed a hand to her forehead as everything grew dark. Amelia! Amelia! Lucas called out, alarmed. She wanted to answer, but her strength was gone. Her body went cold, and she began to slump forward. He lunged, catching her before she hit the ground. She could hear his panicked breathing, feel the frantic grip of his hands. Damn it! What's happening to you, Amelia? Hold on. I'm taking you to the hospital. Just hold on. He lifted her into his arms. She heard people gasping around them, heard Lucas's desperate footsteps, and then the world went black. When Amelia slowly opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was a white ceiling. She smelled antiseptic and realized she was in a hospital room. There was an IV drip in her arm. As she shifted, she felt weight on her right side. Turning her head, she saw Lucas sleeping beside the bed, holding her hand. His eyes were red, and his hair was disheveled, as though he'd been awake for hours before finally dozing off. The moment she stirred, he jolted awake. He looked at her, obvious relief flooding his face. Amelia, he whispered, clutching her hand tighter. She tried to give a small smile, still weak. What happened? You passed out, he answered, voice thick with concern. I thought something terrible had happened. Amelia gazed out the window, half disbelieving the whirlwind of events that led to her aunt and cousin's arrest. What did the doctor say? Lucas hesitated, exhaling before replying. Over fatigue and stress. Your body was worn out from everything that happened. She nodded, understanding. But before she could speak again, Lucas squeezed her hand. I'm not letting you push yourself like that anymore, he murmured intensely. I swear I'll protect you this time. For the first time, despite being in a hospital, Amelia felt safe in his presence. Then the door swung open. A doctor stepped in. Oh, you're awake. How are you feeling? I'm fine, Amelia replied softly. That's good. We ran some blood tests, and congratulations to both of you. Miss Amelia, you're pregnant. It was as though a bomb had gone off in the quiet room. Amelia blinked, certain she hadn't heard right. What did you say? She managed in a whisper. The doctor smiled. You're pregnant. Based on the tests and ultrasound, you're about 9 weeks along. Amelia's mind reeled. Pregnant? She darted a look at Lucas, who stared back at her in stunned silence. For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, his gaze dropped to her abdomen. A baby, he murmured, sounding odd and disbelieving at once. Amelia's heart hammered. She couldn't decide whether to feel fear or joy. The doctor gave Amelia a warm look. You need plenty of rest, especially since your body is still weak from stress. Start prenatal vitamins right away. Then the doctor stepped out. Lucas remained quiet. Amelia searched his face, nervous. Lucas, what do you think? She asked softly. He inhaled, then gently placed his hand over hers. When he met her eyes, there was a surprising brightness in his own, a mixture of shock, happiness, and an emotion she couldn't quite name. We're having a baby, he repeated, then carefully touched her stomach as though afraid he might hurt her. Amelia bit her lip, tears threatening to spill. I don't know what to do, she whispered. Lucas cupped her face, eyes resolute. Don't worry, he said firmly. What matters is that we have a baby, Amelia. Our baby. Her lips trembled. She never imagined he would react this way. I will protect both of you, he vowed. I promise. At that, Amelia finally broke down in tears, though this time it wasn't from sorrow or fear, but from relief. For the first time in her life, someone wanted to stay by her side and their child's side, too. Suddenly, the door burst open again. A nurse rushed in, out of breath, brimming with excitement. "Miss Amelia, your sister woke up." Amelia felt her entire body jolt. "Stephanie?" She could barely get the words out. "Yes," the nurse confirmed. "She came out of her coma." Amelia practically leapt out of bed, ignoring the residual aches. She might have collapsed if Lucas hadn't grabbed her. "Hey," he murmured, worried. "Be careful. You're pregnant now." She shook her head. She couldn't wait any longer. She held his hand and led him out of the room. "I need to see Stephanie." They hurried to Stephanie's room, and Amelia barely felt any pain, adrenaline and emotion carrying her forward. When they arrived, doctors and nurses crowded around Stephanie, who was awake. Stephanie turned her head slowly and looked at Amelia, confusion evident on her face. But the instant she recognized her sister, tears slid from her eyes. "Amelia," Stephanie whispered weakly. Amelia's sobs tore free. "Stephanie." She rushed to her sister's bedside, gently clasping her hand as if afraid it might be just a dream. But it was real. Stephanie was awake. It felt like a brand new start. Not just for Amelia, but for her sister and for the little life growing inside her. She felt Lucas's supportive hand on her arm. When she turned, he was smiling, a genuine, heartfelt smile. It was a day of miracles. 2 weeks later, they returned to Lucas's mansion. Amelia was wrestling with morning sickness. Lucas was wrestling with the bizarre food cravings she had. She lay in bed, a pillow resting on her stomach while he sat on the edge of the mattress, looking both exhausted and amused. "Lucas," she called, eyes shut. "Yes, my love," he sounded anxious. "I want green mango with peanut butter," she mumbled, still not opening her eyes.